All right, so today we are diving into something that's been making waves, something we're calling piggybacking fraud. And we've got a ton of material to unpack here. Articles, blog posts, even someone fighting back with a rap song.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's not just, dry legal stuff. This is about people getting creative to expose some, well, frankly, shady practices and the very real damage they can cause.
Absolutely. And we're talking about something that affects everyone, big companies, small businesses, even individual employees. We've all heard those horror stories, right? Thinking you've got insurance, then bam, you need it, and you're left high and dry.
Exactly. And at the heart of it all is this thing called piggybacking. So picture this. You've got a company, let's say a staffing agency, and they need workers' compensation insurance, right? But instead of just, doing things by the book and getting their own policy, they decide to get a little, shall we say, creative. And basically, they try to freeload off of another company's insurance.
Okay, so hold on. They're pretending their employees work for this other company. How do they even pull that off?
Well, there are a couple of ways they do it. Sometimes it's about underreporting their payroll, making it look like they've got fewer employees to insure. Other times, they might misclassify their employees, saying a construction worker is actually an office clerk, all to try and get a lower risk profile and cheaper premiums.
So basically, they're gaming the system.
Exactly. And the worst part, sometimes they even go as far as using another company's policy entirely without their knowledge. Talk about bold.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That is asking for trouble. We're talking potential lawsuits,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And it creates an uneven playing field. Legitimate staffing agencies are left struggling to compete. Businesses that hire through these shady agencies could end up in a world of hurt financially.
And we can't forget about the employees caught in the middle of all of this. It's not just numbers on a balance sheet. These are people's lives, their livelihoods we're talking about. So how big of a problem are we talking about here? How widespread is this?
Well, one name that keeps popping up in all of this is this Mrs. Piggy. She's kind of become this watchdog, right? Exposing these practices through her blog, Medium articles, even on Reddit. And according to her, this is happening on a pretty massive scale. She even wrote a rap song about it.
Wait, a rap song? Okay, now I have to hear that. But seriously, she's putting herself out there trying to warn people. Why? What's driving her?
Well, she talks about a few specific cases that really seem to light a fire under her. Guys like Lou Perez, who was apparently involved with companies like Staff Lab LLC, allegedly built an empire on cutting corners with workers' comp.
So this Perez guy, he's like the poster boy for piggybacking fraud.
In a way, yeah. But his case, it's not unique. Mrs. Piggy also talks about Danny Barnett, another big name, accused of running these complex schemes to avoid paying payroll taxes and insurance premiums. We're talking millions of dollars allegedly stolen, all while leaving employees completely vulnerable.
Man, that's infuriating. But what's really scary is that those are just the cases we know about.
Hmm.
How many others are out there operating under the radar, doing the same thing?
That's the thing, isn't it? It highlights just how important it is to be informed, to know what to look out for.
Okay, so let's get into that then. What are the warning signs? What should people be on the lookout for to protect themselves?
Well, one of the biggest red flags is if an agency gives you a quote that just seems too good to be true.
Right.
It probably is.
Yeah, if it sounds too good to be true.
Exactly.
But besides that, what are some other things that should raise some eyebrows?
Pay attention to how they talk about their workers' compensation coverage.
Okay.
Are they being upfront about everything? Do they try to avoid answering when you ask about their experience modification rate?
What? Sorry, you lost me there.
Oh, right, their ex-modomy.
Ex-modomy.
Basically, think of it like a safety score for their insurance.
Okay.
A bad ex-modomy means they've had a lot of claims, and that usually means higher premiums.
Oh, I see.
So if they're being weird about their ex-mod,
Yeah,
that's a big red flag.
like a credit score for their insurance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Another thing to watch out for, if they're really insistent on handling everything with the insurance company themselves, like they don't want you talking to them directly, that's another red flag.
Got to verify, right.
Exactly. Transparency is key here.
Okay, so we've got a handle on how this piggybacking thing works. We know the red flags to look out for, but who's actually policing all of this? Like, are there government agencies keeping an eye on this stuff?
You'd certainly hope so, right?
Yeah.
You've got your state agencies, federal agencies, industry watchdogs. It's a whole alphabet soup of organizations.
Right.
But the reality is, it's complicated.
Complicated how? Are they all fighting over who's in charge?
More like they're all kind of doing their own thing, not really connecting the dots.
Okay.
So you've got your state-level folks like the California Department of Insurance, the CDI. They're supposed to be overseeing insurance companies, making sure they're playing by the rules.
Right.
Then you've got groups like the WCIRB, the Workers' Compensation Insurance Rating Bureau. They're all about the data, tracking claims and payroll and all that.
So we've got people looking at the money and people looking at the data.
Right.
What about the feds? What are they doing?
Well, at the federal level, you've got the Department of Labor. They'll step in if there's stuff like employee misclassification going on or those shady multiple employer welfare arrangements, EWAs. Yeah, sometimes those get used in these schemes. And then, of course, if it gets serious enough, the district attorneys might get involved, especially if it looks like criminal activity.
So there's a system in place, at least on paper.
On paper.
But clearly, something's not working. We're hearing from people like Mrs. Piggy, all these cases are popping up. Are these agencies actually catching anyone?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer. Some people say it's a resource issue. These agencies are overwhelmed, understaffed. They just can't keep up with the sheer volume of potential fraud.
So it's like whack-a-mole, but there are just too many moles.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of priorities.
Okay.
Piggybacking, it tends to target lower wage workers, smaller businesses.
Right.
So it might not get the same attention as, say, a massive corporate scandal, even though the impact is very real.
It's seen as small potatoes.
Right.
Even though it's hurting real people.
Right. And then, there are always those more cynical voices out there. They'll say that it's corruption or lobbying efforts that are keeping investigations from going anywhere.
So we've got this system that maybe needs a bit of work, a problem that's not getting enough attention. It's kind of disheartening, But what I'm taking away from this is it doesn't have to be this way, right?
Right, exactly.
We can do something about it.
Absolutely. And it starts with changing how we think about it.
Okay.
It's not just about rules and regulations and punishments. It's about recognizing that there are real people being hurt by this.
Yeah.
Workers who are left vulnerable, businesses that get blindsided. We have to think about that human cost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do we turn that concern into action? What needs to change?
Well, let's go back to those agencies we were talking about.
Okay.
More money would be great, obviously.
Yeah.
But even more importantly, they need to shift from just reacting to fraud after it's happened to actually trying to prevent it in the first place.
So less gotcha and more collaboration. Like working with businesses so everyone understands the rules of the game.
Exactly.
Make them a resource instead of just an enforcer.
Exactly. And speaking of resources, what about technology? We're in the age of big data now.
Okay.
We should be using that.
Yeah, I'm all for using fancy algorithms to actually do some good in the world, but how do we actually apply that to this problem?
Imagine a system that's analyzing payroll data, insurance claims, maybe even what people are saying online, all in real time.
Okay.
It could pick up on suspicious patterns, identify agencies that might be high risk.
Oh, wow.
It'd be like having a digital detective sniffing out fraud before it even happens.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Using tech to actually solve a problem. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to people, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's about giving individuals the power to speak up.
Right.
That's why people like Mrs. Piggy are so important. You don't have to be a lawyer or politician to make a difference.
It's about raising your voice, knowing your rights, and saying something when things don't seem right.
Exactly. And it's on us, the media, to keep shining a light on this issue.
Yeah.
We have to keep asking those tough questions, holding the powerful accountable.
It's on all of us, working together to make the staffing industry more fair, more transparent, something that benefits everyone. That's what I want to see.
Me too. And based on everything we learned today, it's definitely possible. We just have to demand it.
Absolutely. Well, this has been eye-opening for anyone listening. If something seems off, trust your gut and speak up. Don't stay silent.
Well said. Until next time, stay vigilant, and thanks for joining us for this deep dive.